Welcome, dear friends, to Cardiac Radio and the Inner Journey with Paul and Stephen. This amazing book, psychographed by Chico Xavier, and the author is Emmanuel, a true masterpiece that is yet to be discovered by humanity on earth. Today, as this book contains two parts, we are almost at the end of the first part. We've already met the beautiful family of Jeziel, Abigail, and Joshadeb. We've met the young man, Saul of Tarsus, his friends, and his inner drama. He is a conflicted man. He is becoming ever more conflicted when he gets to know of the people of the way. When he meets Stephen, Peter, James, John, Philip, and gets to know of the Messiah. But unlike his expectation, this Messiah is not a powerful man according to his material standards. He's actually a carpenter, humble, simple, totally unexpected in the eyes of Saul of Tarsus. When we enter chapter 8, today we're going to talk about 89. It's about the death of Stephen. And in this very chapter, Emmanuel is going to present to us Saul of Tarsus in his dual sides of his personality. One in which he says that Abigail is his world of sentiment. Yes, he was full of love, compassion, righteousness, and we get to know of how he is faithful, loyal, dedicated. He's so open to her feelings of goodness, which are nourishment for his soul. It's so interesting when we find somebody with Saul's brutality, his arrogance, to see that Emmanuel is introducing us another side of his. And this is very important. Why? So we get the pieces of the puzzle together. Saul of Tarsus was rough in some of his edges, but very soft in other ones. He was already quite evolved for the times, for he didn't see Abigail as a sex object, as somebody who was going to fulfill a social duty, getting married to him. No, he saw Abigail as his soulmate. It is a sign that he is more evolved than the average because at his time, people were not used to that. They often got married through matchmaking arrangements out of conveniences, but he was prepared to get married out of love. Emmanuel is describing to us Abigail as this angel on earth who is so understanding, compassionate, kind. And he says that Abigail was delighted at listening to him, that young man, impulsive and harsh to those who did not know him, but affectionate and sensitive to those who did. It was her exact ideal, the man hoped for by her kind soul. But then later, as he plans on bringing her to the very death of Stephen, we'll see the other side of Saul. a man who is merciless, who is fanatic, who is blind to the truth, who is self centered, self absorbed, and Stephen, quite the opposite. If there is any moment in our lives in which we're going through a tough time, read this chapter 9. In Stephen, we're going to find that inner strength. As Emmanuel says, at the ultimate hour, Stephen remembered the smallest ties of faith that bound him to a higher life. He remembered all his favorite prayers from childhood. He made an effort to visualize the death of his tortured and misunderstood father. Inwardly, he repeated Psalm 23 of David, as he had been used to doing with his sister in situations that seemed insuperable. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack, I shall lack nothing. The words of the sacred writings, as well as Christ's promises in the gospel, were in the core of his heart. His body was broken by his spirit, but his spirit was tranquil and hopeful. Now he had the feeling that two loving hands were passing lightly over his grievous wounds. Dedicated friends from the spiritual realm were surrounding the martyr in his final minutes. This description goes on and on to show to us, if anybody had any question, Jesus and his loving team was there to minimize the pains, to support Stephen, the first martyr of Christianity, and also to express compassion for those who were making a huge mistake. And above them all, Saul of Tarsus, as Emmanuel says, at the very moment, unaware that he was the target of such attention, the preacher of the way, Stephen, came out of his dazed state. Seeing Jesus sadly contemplating the doctor from Tarsus, as if to grieve his condemnable detour, Simon Peter's disciple felt in his heart a sincere friendship for his executioner. He knew Christ, but Saul did not. Full of true fraternity and wishing to defend his persecutor, Stephen exclaimed in a moving voice, Lord, do not hold this sin against him. Upon saying that, Stephen turned his eyes to gaze compassionately upon his executioner. He felt that the Master of Nazareth was caressing his brow, where the last stone had opened a flow of blood. Think about this. There is no doubt when we go through tough times that we're being watched over and cared for by loving beings. Some people say that when huge tragedies happen, man made one especially, they ask, where is God? That didn't prevent it. God is not a man dealing with puppets. He is giving us opportunity to learn and to grow. That's the curriculum of life. And we're all it could always be worse. So here's something we need to know. Joana de Angelis through Divaldo Franco once said, if you think that the hardships of your life are very hard, remember, they could be worse. It is only the tail of the comet because the law of God is always balanced between justice, love, and charity. Justice, love, and charity. In that balance, we never feel everything that was potentially supposed to happen. There is always much compassion. So, here in this case, we see the full description to the point that when Stephen is dying, he sees his sister Abigail because his sister is Saul's fiancée. She recognizes him and says, Saul, it's my brother. And he's like, what? He can't be. Are you crazy? No, it's him. So she turns to Stephen, Jeziel, and says, darling, give me a minute. Let me talk about the dying man for only 1 minute. Impossible. So she's granted the opportunity. Stephen talks to Abigail about the Christ. And it's the most beautiful thing. And at the end, he blesses their union. He even says that one day, Saul would be as faithful to Jesus as he is to Moses. And watched over by Saul, Abigail is asked by Stephen, her brother, to sing the prayer, a prayer for the afflicted. Lord, God, Father of those who weep, of the sad and the oppressed, fortress of the defeated, comfort in all pain, despite the bitter misery of the weeping over our errors. From this world of exile, we clamor for your love. In the afflictions of the way, in the night most tormenting, your generous fount is the good that shall never dry up. You are in everything the light eternal of joy and peace. Our door of hope, which shall never close, when everything despises us in this world of iniquity, when the tempest comes upon the flowers of illusion. O Father, you are the light divine, the aim of certainty, overcoming all harshness, overcoming all affliction. On the day of our death, in abandonment or in torment, help us to forget the darkness, the pain, the evil, that in our final moments we may feel the light of life, renewed and forgiving, in happy and immortal peace. Abigail finished the prayer. Her face was full of tears. Under the soft caresses of her hand, Jeziel became still. As soon as it was all over, Saul of Tarsus comes to Abigail and says, everything is finished between us. And she's jaw dropped. She doesn't understand. She questions him. In the most difficult hour of my life, you're going to leave me alone and let me be. So don't be ashamed. She said, I'm not going to tell anyone. And he blessed us. He doesn't care. She goes away. She doesn't tell anybody. She goes back to Zachariah's house. Ruth received her. Soon she had a fever. Of course, friends. Abigail is an angel, but she's in the body of a human. And I say angel figuratively. You can tell she's spiritually evolved, but emotionally, it's a lot. So it's interesting to see the effects in her physical body. Now she falls sick, and in chapter 9, titled Abigail the Christian, we see that Saul of Tarsus never saw her again. He became even more cruel in his fanaticism. He was deeply enraged about the ideas, and as Emmanuel says, the dreams of his youth were over. He was consumed by selfishness. He was envious of Stephen's peace of mind. And Saul sensed that spiritual needs were multiplying his consolation thirsty soul. And the most interesting part is that at some point he can. So, what's happening to Saul, right? Emmanuel is showing to us, because if you read in the Bible, it seems like he was cruel and suddenly he changed. No, he's showing to us that deep inside, he was a man of a good heart who was completely fanatic about his ways of thinking, very proud of himself, very selfish, very egotistic, but he had a soft heart and a goal to serve God. So those were the two most important treasures, big constructions of feelings in him that sustained him to leave that torment of the mind and start entering what we call the existential conflict. He couldn't understand. How can somebody like him, who devoted his life to God, now be going through all this? So, those disappointments and frustrations in life open more and more and more of him. He's becoming ever more conflicted, and that's a good thing. He's opening permeability for the truth. So he goes and seeks Abigail. He goes to Zachariah's home, but he gets to know that she's bedridden. She's almost dying. They have a beautiful conversation. He listened to her. She forgives him. She never said anything about what truly happened there. And he is in greater awe with his beloved one, Abigail. He was deeply moved. He had never seen such great breadth of reasoning and lucidity as displayed in that tranquil and tender tone. And then one day she talks about meeting Ananias, a man who devoted himself to Jesus' teachings and helping people. He taught her about the Christ. And now he's like, Abigail, let go of these sad thoughts. And he's like, no, no, no. He doesn't agree. And she says, you're wrong, Saul. I don't feel sad, although I am convinced of the impossibility of my earthly happiness. Jesus was not an ordinary teacher of sorceries. He was the Messiah, the giver of consolation and life. His influence has renewed my strength and has filled me with courage and true understanding of the supreme designs. And he's upset. As Emmanuel describes, selfishness attacks our health and jealousy harms the divine command, just as rusted moths render our tools and clothes useless if we neglect them. Though Saul is impressed with her reasoning, sharp and clear, Abigail is becoming more frail, and deep inside, Emmanuel is showing to us he could not comprehend God except as a powerful and unyielding master. All human concerns bowed before his sovereign will. However, Saul had begun to search for the reason for his distressing uneasiness. Why was he unable to find anywhere the peace he so ardently desired? And yet, smiling and serene, those miserable people of the way were handing themselves over the chains of prison. Well, it goes on and on and on until our dear Abigail, dying, she made a supreme effort and said her last words. In her last words, she teaches that Jeziel taught her to break the selfishness of her soul. Jesus loves you so very much and has great hopes for you. Saul cried desperately, shouting, Abigail, Abigail. And she said, Jeziel is here to take me. She fixed her eyes on each one of them in turn as if to show her loving gratitude. Saul of Tarsus remained speechless in dread, while Ruth, awashed in tears, covered the seemingly sleeping body with roses. This is the moment before the road to Damascus. So when people think that our transformation happens out of the blue, oh, one day I woke up and had a shift, it's not true. We go from our tormenting minds through sufferings and pains. We open permeability for the truth, entering inner conflicts. That's why Jesus said, Blessed are the afflicted. Now afflicted, Saul of Tarsus wants to talk to the man who taught about the Christ to his betrothed, Abigail. Next week, when we come back, Saul of Tarsus is on the road to Damascus. But today, the exercise we're going to do is the following. We're going to ask ourselves, when we detoured in this reincarnation. Because Saul of Tarsus, had a reincarnatory plan to work with Jesus. He was not supposed to persecute the Christians, to go after them, to kill them. That was his decision. That was his detour. Why? Because of his selfishness and pride. We always detour in our commitments in life when we feel victimized, when we feel that we deserve more than life is giving to us, and then we detour. Where have we detoured in this life? Because in the gospel according to Spiritism, we're going to learn that there are sufferings, afflictions that come from causes of previous lives, but there are others that are imposed by us because of these life's choices that were not supposed to happen. Think about it. Let us meditate on our detour and see how we're going to take the road to Damascus to potentially recalculate our route and go back to what God has planned. Thank you, friends, for the opportunity of being here with you. We wish you many blessings.